What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe. It's your boy Devin, and today we got a special guest. And with this special guest, he is an expert in digital marketing. He has his own agency. He's a public speaker. He has a podcast of his own, Entrepreneur, right?
Yep.
And then, he actually just became a dad recently too. So his story is definitely unique. And the Mindset Cafe, we're here to help you on your personal development journey, your journey as an entrepreneur, or anything that, from relationships to parenting to anything that, we can do. And the best way to do that is through other people's stories and like-minded, individuals. So today I wanted to welcome Adam McChesney. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, Devin, thanks for having me, man. Happy to be here. Excited for this episode and appreciate you having me on.
Definitely. So let's get started I know, right now you're a seven-figure, digital marketing guru and everything, but how did this all start for you? I know, did you come out of college and all of a sudden just want to be an entrepreneur, or did you start somewhere else?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I got started, I guess, really seriously after college in medical device sales. So I fumbled around for my first year and a half. I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do. I tried a couple different businesses and things like that, tried to start things off the ground, but it never really went anywhere. So I ended up stumbling my way into medical device sales. I worked for a small company here in St. Louis, Missouri, which is where I'm from, for about 18 months, traveled pretty much the entire country. Most of the time was on the East Coast, so that was mainly my territory, and I was selling chemicals and reagents to a lot of medical schools and universities, as well as private institutions that did a variety of different life science research. So I was really good in terms of building my sales skills and just relationships and prospecting and cold calling and all those things. And then I went to a company called ResMed. So if anybody's familiar with CPAP equipment, the masks, the ventilators, all those types of things, I managed about a $25 million a year territory here in the state of Missouri for about 3 years. When I first got there, I was in more of a support role, and about 9 months in, I ended up getting promoted. And I was the youngest key account manager in the entire company by about 10 years. So I was sitting there at 26 going into 27 and got this promotion. And then the first full year that I was there, I ended up making about $200,000. So I'm sitting here like, what in the world? I went from making 75 the year before to almost 200,000, getting this promotion and really having the rest of my life written for me if I truly wanted to. A lot of the people in that company, which was an amazing company, were lifers there. They were there 10, 15, some people close to 20 years at that point since the company literally launched their sales program. And so I really loved the company. I loved all that stuff, but I ended up proposing to my now wife, Delaney, in 2018. And I ended up traveling almost every week, it seemed like, if not every other week from the time we got engaged in August to November. And so I was sitting in a hotel room in November of 2018, and I was like, man, like there's got to be something more to life. There's got to be a vehicle of entrepreneurship somewhere that I can at least get started as a side hustle and then hopefully grow it into a business to where I don't have to sacrifice the money, but I can get some time back. I can get some more. So like freedom, right? The freedom to work when I want to, where I want to, with who I want to, and how I want to. So sitting in a hotel room in Kansas City, Missouri, right before Thanksgiving. So literally just came up on the 5-year anniversary of how I found out about digital marketing. I typed into Google how to make money online. So I found all these different like crazy ideas that everybody's looking at when they're trying to become an entrepreneur. And I get targeted or retargeted by an ad on Facebook that essentially sells me on the idea of being a digital landlord of sorts. So of course, like I'm super intrigued by it because I was looking at real estate as a potential opportunity, but didn't necessarily want to dive into it. And it taught me digital marketing through building websites and ranking them on Google and then selling the leads, either pay per lead or a flat fee rental on a monthly basis or working out commission deals, things like that. So I bought the course, paid $7,000 and bought the course and then dove in, built my first website within a couple of weeks. And within a month, literally had a website on the first page of Google already ranking and generating phone calls. So I'm like, okay, this can work. But I didn't necessarily have the time to go and do a ton of stuff or at least find people to actually pay for these leads because I was working obviously a 9-to-5 job traveling all over. So I built up about 200 websites that were more so just like case studies, throwing crap against the wall, testing out different things on Google from 2018 to 2020. And pandemic hits, and we end up buying our forever dream home. And then we get in our forever dream home, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go all in on this. We were doing a couple $1,000s a month, close to $10,000. And so I go full time in July 2020, and then decide to transition my agency and basically start over to building these websites and doing these things for traditional companies and brands. Obviously, we built your website, and instead of doing it for my own and basically owning the real estate, because everybody was like, Adam, we love that you know how to build websites. We love that you know SEO, but we don't want to rent those things. We want to own them for our business. And so I was following the money. I was following the market. And I went from there, did it for about a year on my own, and then ended up becoming a franchisee at Height Digital, and then became a partner this past June of the entire corporation. And we grew really quick right out of the gate once I went full time, because I really dove into personal branding, and we hit a 7-figure trajectory in our first 15 months, and then did multi-million-dollar years this year, and it's been an amazing journey.
Man, that's awesome. It's funny that you started off in medical sales. Like, sometimes I forget that's actually one of the first tastes of entrepreneurship that I got in high school. You know, I had my own t-shirt companies and stuff like that, but one of my friend's parents owned a medical device or medical supply company, and
Yes.
actually worked for them for a year. So they would get their equipment in, we would, etch off the names and rebrand it, and, they would sell it to doctors and what may have you. And we used to have to do the traveling and go to these trade shows and all that kind of stuff. What was that realization for you? You said you're in a hotel room doing what pretty much every pre-entrepreneur does, and Google's how to make money or how to become an entrepreneur. What was that realization, or was there a certain incident that all of a sudden led you to realize that this isn't for you, or you wanted to go your own route?
Yeah, another great question. I was sitting there in a couple months removed from proposing to my now wife, Delaney, and sitting there, and I'm like, okay, I envision one day we're going to have a family, which just came true with our first child, Murphy, a couple months ago. And I envision that I want the lifestyle, and I want to be able to provide. I don't want to have to, basically go paycheck to paycheck. I don't want those things for my family down the line, because I've been there as a child of that family, but also on the other side of a family that had a lot of things as well, but it was just an up and down roller coaster. I didn't want that for my family. And so I thought years in advance, ended up being 5 years in advance, where I said, hey, I want to have something where if I'm going and traveling and I'm away from my family, it's not because of money. It's not because somebody told me to do it. It's because it's something I'm building and I'm very passionate about, and there's impact behind it. Not that I was living a crazy lifestyle, and I still don't live a crazy lifestyle, but I saw the writing on the wall of, okay, I see why people stay in this position and stay at a company like this because of the money. But they don't see their family. They don't get to go to their kids' sporting events. They're maybe not the greatest, spouse. I didn't want that. So I wanted more, and I saw entrepreneurship as being that vehicle in order to be able to do so.
No, definitely. That's awesome. With that, do you think that everyone is, because everyone wants that freedom, and everyone, wants it to a degree. Obviously, some people would rather have the job security, like you're saying, but I think that, and I'm sure you've seen this, I think that entrepreneurship can be over glorified to an extent, and people have this misperception of, it's all of a sudden you start your own business and now you get to kick your feet up. How do you think that entrepreneurship has been for you and others that you've seen? Like, do you think that entrepreneurship is as easy as people try to make it out to be?
It's definitely not as easy as people make it out to be. I will say, when I was going into it, I kind of thought it was going to be easy, right? Because I was making some money, and I'm coming from a sales rep background, so I'm thinking revenue is good, just grow the revenue, not realizing that you have expenses and taxes and all these things that you have to account in. So I wasn't necessarily the best business owner in the very beginning, probably for about the first year and a half, almost 2 years, because I didn't equate and understand those things. The one thing that I did do, though, about 3 weeks into entrepreneurship as I joined my first mastermind. So I'm the type of guy, I played college soccer. I played soccer my entire life, and I was never the quickest, the fastest, or the strongest, but I was always able to see plays ahead. And so when I went full time into entrepreneurship, I had started to join Facebook groups and started listening to people's YouTube videos and podcasts and things like that, even before they blew up like they are today. And I started to see all these people that were joining these different masterminds. And I saw what they were doing on social media. I'm like, man, there's a consistent theme here. Getting in the right rooms with the right people, trading your money to get experience and buy time back. Like, that's what I want to do. So for the first 3 weeks of entrepreneurship, we had just moved into this house, had a pool. I'm like sitting there thinking like, man, I'm just going to be chilling by the pool, laptop, all that stuff. And it was like everything but that after the first 3 weeks, because it is, I mean, nothing's overnight, right? But especially when you're trying to grow and build something. And at every step, when I've reached that milestone, like when I thought, like every digital marketing agency is like, man, I really want to hit that 7-figure mark. Well, most people never do it. I did it in 15 months. And so that was my goal long term. And then I did in 15 months. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, well, this isn't as cool as I thought it was going to be. And there's just, it doesn't get easier. You make a little bit more money, but there's 7-figure problems. There's 7-figure, all the things that come with the business. So then I had to elevate to that next level. And as entrepreneurs, we get to one level or base camp and we're always looking at the next thing. So could I have like sat there and coasted and been like, yeah, this is just the life we're going to live? Sure. But I would have probably never been content or happy. So I think even the entrepreneurs that are understanding of what it takes to actually do it, there's always another level that we're pushing towards, right? Which causes us to go into that like fight or flight mode for that next level, because that's, who we are at the core. Entrepreneurship, I think, is widely, utilized as this lever for people to just say that they are an entrepreneur. I mean, there's people that literally are doing all the MLM stuff and all these other things. And like, I get the mindset behind it, but very few people in all reality are truly actively being entrepreneurs like we are, right? In understanding what's actually happening, right? So many people are like, yeah, we're doing this. It's like, no, you're really not. And it's not for everybody. A lot of people that I know that are entrepreneurs are like actually way better equipped to probably be an entrepreneur. No different than I know some amazing, amazing individuals. It's like, man, you need to go bet on yourself and you need to become an entrepreneur, but they want to stay with the security. They want to stay with all those things, which I get because I've obviously been there myself as well.
No, definitely. And I think, yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, some entrepreneurs would probably be better fit as an entrepreneur. They have the work ethic and stuff like that. They maybe just don't have all the skills or even the drive to just continue that growth. Because as entrepreneurs, and I mean, your growth is amazing. I mean, I know you started a website and got so many leads that you actually started a company off of it for auto repair, glass repair, or some of that, right?
Yeah.
We naturally, as entrepreneurs or true entrepreneurs, have that never satisfied kind of mindset, and there's always that next stage. And just because you get to that next step doesn't mean that there's not going to be problems. Like you said, you hit 7 figures, now you're dealing with 7-figure problems. Like, you asked to be there, well, now you got to deal with what's there. But that's naturally a mindset and a personal development thing that you got to work for. I think one of the huge things that you kind of slid kind of quickly by was, you mentioned that you were thinking on a 5-year goal, right? You're not thinking on what's just this month's goal or this year's goal. How do you continuously, are you still doing that? Are you still looking, 5-10 years, out for your goal setting?
Yeah, great question. So I am, but I've started to really break those things down to 90-day increments and really a year increment, because things happen so quickly in entrepreneurship, right? So like at the beginning of this year, I had no idea I'd become a partner at All of Height instead of just running my franchise. And so if I would have like really like hammered into my 3 to 5 year stuff and like been like, no, this is absolutely happening with our franchise, our business, etc., well, then all of that planning, all of that like thought and ideas wouldn't have gone to waste, but it probably would have been almost worth nothing, right? And so I think as entrepreneurs and as a lot of people in general, we underestimate what we can do in a very, very, I would say like a couple of years, right? We underestimate the growth that we can have. but we overestimate what we can do in 90 days. We overestimate what we can do in 6 months to a year. So we reverse engineer all of that stuff to say, okay, what's actually possible? Let's not over target. I mean, of course, you're going to over target some things, but I could have never imagined 3.5 years being in business like this was where I'm at today. Like, I mean, of all the things that have happened between the auto glass company, I also had a landscape design company with the exact same model as the auto glass repair stuff, the personal branding program that I just launched, the marketing company, like literally less than 1% of the stuff 3.5 years ago when I started, I could have probably been able to tell you. So if I'm having those things, right, and I'm like so focused on that, it's important, but you also need to break things down. And I was always going big picture, but I wasn't taking a look at 90 days. I was like, this is what the future is going to look like. It's all going to be this. And so I've started to dial those things back and really break it down even smaller.
No, that's smart. I mean, that's the way I kind of do things. I do have a 10-year, a 5-year, and then, down to 90 days and even months. But your goals, like I think people have to realize that goals aren't necessarily set in stone when they're the long term, the 5 to 10 year, even a year out, because things are so adaptive and so many things are happening. But it is important, like you said, to have 90-day goals, because those are the ones you're going to be hitting, and your accumulation of your 90-day goals will start to develop your 5-year, your 10-year goals as well. But to know and to realize that your goals should have a bigger view, and just know that they're adaptable. So if it's not going exactly where you thought you'd be, like think about yourself 5-10 years ago. What were you doing? Did you think you were going to be where you are today? Because I didn't think I was going to be here 5 years, let alone 10 years ago.
Yeah.
How has and then I know you mentioned personal development, where we met in a mastermind. How have masterminds, podcasts, all those things kind of shaped your personal development?
I think it's been almost everything, right? Like a lot of people are like, man, you're so consistent, you're so motivated, you're so like determined and all those things. It's like, yeah, I am. That's just kind of like who I am, my core. But you can have consistency, you can have determination, you can have motivation in all the wrong areas as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I didn't pay myself for the first 9 months of being an entrepreneur full time. Not that we weren't making money, but I was always kind of the person where I want to build up that safety net in the business to be able to go hire people, to be able to go do different things. Most importantly, put myself in the rooms with people who are at where I'm trying to go. And I'd rather decrease the amount of time it takes in order for me to get there without going through all of the hurdles, stepping in the potholes, falling face to first. I still did that because a lot of the times I wasn't looking for certain things, or somebody would tell me not to do something, and I would, I'm a hard-headed person as well. So I'd have to go figure it out and say, I can prove I'm wrong. And then I would go and be like, okay, you're right. But more importantly, I'd rather be in those types of rooms, building those relationships, learning from those people, because I can't see the future, right? I can't see where I'm trying to go, but these people have years of experience, years of going through all the heartache and the tribes and the tribulations of what I'm trying to do. Why not avoid that if I can? Why not go get the experience? Why not go build the relationships with many of the people that we built relationships with? Because at all of this stuff, and it kind of goes back to the personal branding of why I've grown and why I've done all those things, I'm trying to build that specifically because I don't know what the next 5 to 10 years look like. I have an idea, but I want to be known as the entrepreneur, as the person that like is giving back and providing value to people, regardless of what industry or business that I'm in. And I want to be able to go tap into my market and my network and be like, hey, I'm going this new avenue. I have no idea what I'm doing. Who do you know that can help me? I can go make a post anywhere pretty much in any of those groups that I'm in. And there'd be people raising their hand trying to help and looking out for me, no different than I've looked out for other people.
Definitely. How, do you still listen? So I know that like masterminds are huge for both of us, and I think you have the exact same view I do. It's not that, I think looking from the outside, you'll never really understand it unless you are looking to really grow yourself. But looking or from the inside out, you can't really explain in like too much that it's more than just like you're paying to be around people, that are ahead of you and stuff like that. But you truly do make connections, and the advice that you get from other people at in different industries that are ahead of you, behind you. Like you have so many like-minded people that can excel your growth in shorten that time. It's crazy. And the way I view it is I value time. And when I say that, people are like, oh yeah, you just want your own time back. No, I value the time that you've spent making the mistakes that I'm about to make or am making right now, so I can speed up, my solutions. So even with our franchise advisor and stuff, we hired him because he opened up his own franchise, launched it, got it acquired. I value those 30 years he put in, and now I don't have to make half the mistakes that he made, right? I'm still going to make some of them because me, like you, I am hard-headed in certain things. But I definitely think that we have a similar view on that, and that's awesome. Do you still listen to podcasts? I know you have your own podcast, but do you still listen to podcasts and audiobooks and read books and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so reading pretty consistently, just the physical copy. I was having a lot of audiobooks that I was reading and things like that, but I've since started to scale back that and only listen to podcasts. People that I typically listen to podcasts on all the time: Andy Frisella, Ed Milet, Alex Hormozy. But Ed Milet is one that like I try to catch every freaking episode that he does. Not only the guests that he has on, but just like how he sees things. He sees them in a completely different light that I'm like, okay. And this goes back to like a bigger thing, right? But like people complain all the time that they don't have opportunities, that they don't have a college education, that they're behind the eight ball for whatever reason compared to other people. Between YouTube, podcasts, and books, opportunities are freaking endless. Education is literally at our fingertips, and so many people don't do that. You can literally get an education for your education by just listening to Ed Milet, by just listening to Andy Frisella or Alex Hormozy or any of those types of people, whoever you find that you resonate with the most. And so that's what I've really tried to do as well, is just absorbing information, taking little bits and pieces of nuggets and implementing them throughout the process to be able to figure out like, where can I get better? How can I sharpen the axe? Being around these people, iron sharpens iron. How can I do those types of things and absorb the information, the lessons, the failures, the mistakes, all those types of things from the people that have already done it?
No, awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, dude, I agree. I think Ed Milet is probably one of the best interviewers that I've listened to.
Yes.
I know everyone's a Joe Rogan fan and stuff like that, and like, while that's interesting, Ed Milet, one, you'll learn pretty much in every area of life and everyone's journeys, but the way he interviews and the way he speaks is definitely, it sets himself far above a lot of other people, and it's always a good episode when you listen to him. And I listened to Alex and Andy as well, and whatever you kind of fit with and find interesting, definitely it's one of those things that you're only going to benefit from it. Do you think that for you, listening to the podcast and listening to them interview and stuff like that has helped you in your own podcasting and even in your public speaking?
Oh, absolutely. Like what you said about Ed Milet being a great interviewer, those are all the types of things that I'm picking up on. Like even when I'm a guest, on your podcast, I'm trying to understand how I'm answering your questions, but how you're asking me those questions and where those things all tie in. And so you've asked some incredible questions based on like live conversations and things like that. When I first started my podcast, it was more like, hey, here's the set stuff that we're going to go to. In the last 25 episodes, it's been more of a conversation. Not only am I getting better feedback on those episodes, but they're more downloaded. All those things that come with being a consistent podcaster, right? Like we'll launch our 100th episode in February-ish, I think late February. So I've been doing this a while, but I'm always trying to figure out how to get better, faster, stronger, and like figure out where that opportunity lies and like where I need to go hone in on that. I think listening to podcasts and seeing how the guests answer the questions, but more importantly, how the interviewer is asking those questions based on live conversations. I think that makes a really, really good podcast host, not having your own agenda, going down and doing those own things. For me, those first like 50 or so episodes that I was doing that, it was for two reasons. One, for me to be comfortable on the podcast, right? Like I didn't want to just go and be like, man, I don't know what I'm asking. But for two, to give me also the confidence to be like, man, you know what you're doing. But I also didn't feel like I had the ability to like, not that I can't listen, but like, you know what we're talking about. I mean, the questions you've asked have been like spot on based on where we're at in the conversation. That comes with experience. That comes with feeling comfortable about doing that, where you're having a conversation and you pick up something in your mind and you're like, man, I want to go back to that. Or what you just said, you skipped over it really quick, but like, I want to hone in on that for people listening to this podcast. Make sure you write that down. Like those are the types of things that now I do, like second nature, that it used to freak me out to even think about trying to do that in the middle of an episode.
No, that's awesome. I think the cool thing is that you're starting to, or you've been, kind of extracting the lesson in not only your own experiences, but also learning to listen to and view things from a different light. And that it's a different mindset and a different perception on everything that goes around you, right? So when you see something on social media, or you listen to a podcast, or you're reading a book, you're looking at it differently than just a typical consumer that's just going through it and it's like, oh, that was an awesome episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now getting to analyze that, and that's what you mentioned earlier, listening to podcasts, listening or watching YouTube videos, reading books, it's an endless supply of education. And I mean, I can attest to that, because that's literally how I acquired all my business information and stuff in the beginning. Especially was YouTube, was kind of podcasts. They weren't really a big thing at that point, but audiobooks and books and viewing all those things. I didn't get a business degree in college. Like I got a kinesiology degree. I was taught through all the other online things like you mentioned. So that's awesome that you're starting to extract the lessons and view things and work on your personal development more so than just, hey, this is what they said, I'm gonna go try this. You're analyzing more and more. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's a huge step for any entrepreneur to start realizing that.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things as well. It's like, all right, if you can focus on where you're at in the moment and try to go get better with that. I used to like always be in, and a lot of times I think this starts when you're in the business and wearing all the different hats and you're like fighting for your life, right? So you're like, man, I need to bring on this client, or I need to bring on these things. I struggled so much early on, especially launching that podcast and dedicating time to content creation, because I'm like, man, I could be calling people, I could be doing these other things. So when you're in the moment doing all these different things, you're almost like, crap, I'm actually not even paying attention to where I'm at in this podcast episode doing all these things. And now I've just started to like turn do not disturb off. I mean, I have that on all the time now, but like just be like, all right, for the next 45 minutes to an hour, I'm here with Devin, or I'm interviewing Devin, or whatever that might be. And when you focus on like what you're actually doing, you start to understand where you can get better at, because your mind's not racing in all these different directions trying to figure out what's going on. And so being self-aware and conscious about what's actually going on and where you can get better at, I think that plays a big part into it as well.
No, definitely. I think that, yeah, what you're mentioning on is, I actually had someone on the podcast. It hasn't dropped yet, but he was talking about how we are so focused, especially with social media and everything, like our attention spans are like within 5 seconds, and one thing he said to try is basically look at a candle flame and stare at that candle flame and only think about that candle flame for a minute, right? And if you don't have a candle flame, like you can do a video of a candle flame, but if you lose the thought of the candle flame, or you think of anything else, bring yourself back and try to do it. And I told him, I was like, that's a minute, doesn't seem that long, but to only focus on that one thing for an entire minute is definitely underrated. And that's definitely harder than, you would think it is. So yeah, I agree. Like being intent and being in the moment is, you'll extract more, but also you start to train yourself to focus on what you're actually doing. And while a lot of people start to think, oh, I'm a multitasker because I'm an entrepreneur. Well, yeah, if you're a multitasker and you're thinking about a million things at once and you're not focused on any given one thing, what is the quality of any of those things, right? So what is something that if you kind of catch yourself going in a crazier mindset, what is one thing that you start to try to do to bring yourself back into the moment?
Yeah, so I think it really starts with like the entire routine of how I'm operating, right? So it starts with everything I do in the morning. So meditation, working out, just reading, and like not trying to like rush into the world, right? Letting things come to me and like playing at my own rhythm, I think is super, super important. And I also tried to like make sure that between every single meeting I have, there's a 10 to 15-minute break. So I'm not just going from one thing to the next and doing all those things, taking some time, not to just like eat lunch and then just run back into everything, but taking some time to like take a step back. I think where we end up getting lost is we're going meeting to meeting to meeting. And again, as you mentioned, we're thinking that's like productivity, but it's really just busy. Or we're thinking about like all these other things. We're thinking about social media. We're thinking about all these like things that are coming up. And it's because our mind is racing and we're like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. I can have all these things. When we're talking about like multitasking, it's like, that's not really multitasking. You're just in all these different directions running around. So I've tried to really get aware myself, but like self-centered, I think would probably be the best way to describe it. And then figuring out how I need to tackle what's going to happen that day, right?
Right. No, definitely. And you take each task as it comes, focus on the task at hand, cross that bridge when it gets there, all those little sayings, right? But there is weight behind those. And do you think that doing that and not letting yourself, be in that fluttered mindset, do you think that that has a positive impact on the relationship that you've had with your family? And I mean, now you're newborn.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as entrepreneurs, we struggle sometimes to truly understand where we're going or where we're at and how our family fits into the puzzle. I'll give you an example. Like going back to 2018, I said I was doing this for my future family. And as I'm growing the business, as I'm putting in the hours, as I'm waking up and doing all the different things, right? We do things differently as entrepreneurs and we fight differently because there's more on the line. And we'll always say, hey, I'm doing this for the family. I'm doing this, right? But then we work a really long day and we come home, and I'm guilty of it from time to time as well. And we're just back into our phone or back into the laptop, back into all those things. And the more that I've came to the conclusion and truly like the understanding that if we don't have the support of our family, even though we're all in for our family, we say those things, the actions are so much louder than the words, right? So we can say what we want all day long. Murphy's 11 weeks old. It's not going to be long before he's two like your daughter, and they're going to start to see, he's going to start to see like, when is dad coming home? How is he interacting with mom? How is he interacting with me after work? Like all of those things, I'm making conscious efforts to try to improve and also delegate a lot of stuff off my plate. I've always been the type of person where it's like, man, it's probably just easier for me to knock this out and then I'll just knock it out. But then when you knock it out one time, it ends up turning into 10 times and then turns into, 10 months of you doing that, trying to take more and more off my plate because one, I'm not good at a lot of those things. I think I am, but there's better people on my team to be able to handle that. So that way I'm getting the most out of my day and I'm not going home feeling like, man, I just worked a 12-hour day and I still have to give more at the cost of my family.
Right. No, it's definitely, I mean, it's one of those things that I know a lot of people talk about is, I'm doing this for my family, like you said. And if you start to create that habit of you get home and you're having a long day and then all of a sudden you hop back on your phone, you answer a quick email and that becomes a habit, like you said, all of a sudden 5 years, 10 years goes by, one, Murphy's already grown up. And then the whole thing that you've been doing for the family, you've lost your connection with them. So then there is this whole, you did it for them and they're like, yeah, but we would rather have you, right?
Yes.
So that's one of those things where as entrepreneurs, and believe me, I'm guilty of it, and I tried to be, the best I can at it. It's definitely a skill that is constantly worked at, but knowing that when you're with your family, there should be dedicated time, that you're giving 100% attention, just like how we are now, to them, so that they feel the entire attention from you, right? They
Mm-hmm.
feel the love. They feel when you're talking to them, you're not answering a question looking at your phone. You're actually answering them and looking them in the eye, and they're like, "Oh man, okay, like you're here. You're actually here, right?"
Mm-hmm.
Like, have you had that like with your wife or anything like that? Has she made any comments or asked you to not pick up your phone or any kind of thing like that?
Oh yeah, she's really good at calling me out. Like, and I ask her to, right? Like, I think that's where a good foundation is at. And I've had people that have been guests on my podcast where they talked like, hey, I've went through a divorce because my wife just sat there, didn't say anything, wasn't communicating how she feels, wasn't calling me out on my BS and things like that. And so as things have progressed, right, as we've obviously had Murphy and we've been married for a couple of years and business has grown, right? It's been really, really important for us to not only have that communication, but to have the accountability as well, because we're so in our stuff all day long. Sometimes we need an extra set of eyes to be like, hey, you said this and now you're on your phone after 6 o'clock, or you said no computer, or you said whatever that was. And we sometimes forget, right? Out of just, again, it's not like we're trying to do anything wrong, but we sometimes are just so in the moment trying to get these things done that we don't think about it. So I'd say like the communication, the accountability is something that has been very, very beneficial. And then also just opening up, I think, even more about what's actually going on. For example, like, my wife will ask me sometimes, hey, how was your day, or what's going on? Oh yeah, things are great. Things are great. And it's like, crap, no, things are not great at all. But you also don't want to like bring her into that or scare her about what might be going on. But the more I've not done that, she's been like, no, I actually want to. She's like, I know I'm not going to understand it all because I'm not in the business and I'm not an entrepreneur, but I at least want to know what's going on. And the more that we've communicated around that, I think it's made a lot of things better.
No, definitely. And believe me, I've noticed that in my own, relationship with my wife. We communicate with our teams, and we let our teams know the problems so that we have solutions and so forth. But sometimes we forget that our wife or our kids, like, they're part of a team too with us,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we have to make sure that we're communicating. Just like you said, they may not understand everything, or even in my own picture, like, I don't want to let her know everything that's going on, right? But sometimes they just want to feel included, right?
Yeah.
We feel like we're shielding them, but in reality, we're kind of separating ourselves from them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really smart that, you have realized, or that you guys call each other out on certain things, and that communication line is open. Because that's so important, especially in the home life, and especially with, young kids like we have. And with that, I want to ask, what is one, I like to ask this to everyone that comes on, but what is one piece of advice or one like topic or whatever that you want to leave with the listeners that has brought you to where you are, either professionally or just, in your own personal growth, development and journey? But what is that one thing?
I'd say it's having a very, very clear and strong purpose and why for everything that you do. So like for me, we also have this at Height where every single employee declares like a commitment, which could be a purpose, a why, whatever. For me, it's literally that I'm the commitment of being a whole, well-rounded leader. And that's in my faith, that's in my family, that's in business, and that's in my health. And my why is my family, but it's also to impact as many people as I possibly can. So that's why I do podcasts. It's why I speak on stage. It's why I produce as much content as I can. So those things are all at the front and center of my mind every single day when I wake up. My alarm on my phone literally says to make an impact to as many people as I possibly can. That's what my alarm says. So if I want to try to go snooze, I want to try to go do all those things, like I'm literally looking at and saying, all right, not today, or I'm going to do it in, I'm going to snooze, right? So I think so many people don't have that purpose and they don't have that why, or it's for all of the wrong reasons, right? It's tangible, or it's like a goal, right? Your purpose and your why has to be something so much bigger than just yourself. And it can't be a 1 or a 2 year thing. It has to be like a lifetime commitment to whatever that is. And when you have that, and when you live and breathe that, it is the difference between succeeding when crap hits the fan and failing. And so I didn't have that for a very long time. I thought I knew what I wanted, but over the last 2 years, since I've really gotten centered on that, it's made the decisions that I do make on a daily basis, has made how I operate and how I overcome a lot of the crap just that much. Well, I'm not going to say easier, but more impactful for me in understanding why I do what I do.
No, I agree with you, and it's crazy. Actually, in my core values, like my I is actually impact, and it's just like you said, actually to impact as many people on a positive scale as we can while we're here, right? So I think that's awesome, and you do have to know your purpose, and you do have to know your why. And while it can be tangible to a degree, if it's only tangible, it's not going to last, and you're not going to feel fulfilled. So it does have to be something bigger, right? So when you're asking your or trying to find out your reason or your why, and you give your answer, ask why that's your answer, and then ask why that's that answer. Ask a few times to really get down to that core, and I think you have found that, and that's amazing. Where can people connect with you and your podcast or your anything for personal branding, for height?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest place is to go to AdamMcChesney.com. You'll see all my different social links on there, links to my podcast. Podcast is called Entrepreneur. The easiest place to connect with me on social media is going to be Instagram. That's Adam L. McChesney. And then our personal branding course and program and all that good stuff, which just is getting ready to officially launch, is called Builders of Authority. You can go type that into Facebook. Builders of Authority, that's a free Facebook group, and you can also see everything that we're doing at buildauthority.co.
That's awesome. And I'll put all that in the show notes as well, so you guys can find that. If this show helped you out on, or you took any, and I know you guys did, so don't even lie. If you found any nuggets in this episode, please share it, leave a review. And like always, guys, thank you for listening. See you on the next one.